Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Yata Sarvani Bhutani Pratibhanti Stitani Cha Yatraivo Bhashamam Yanti Tasmai Satyatmane Namaha. So, where are we in our text?
We're on chapter 23, number 18, page 239.
Can you help us out, Puneet?
Section 3. Arjunopapyanam, the story of Arjuna. Shri Rama Uvacha Puryashta Kaswarupam Me Bhagavan Kidrisham Bada. Shri Rama said, revered sage, of what kind is the natural character of Puryashtaka, or eightfold city? Tell me that.
Going on.
Vasishtha Uvacha Annadhyantam Jagat Vijam Yat Brahmasti Niramayam Tadeva Kalana Yuktam Atra Jiva Iti Smritaha. Vasishtha said, that Brahman, or the Supreme Spirit, which is without beginning and end, and which is the seed or origin of this world and untainted, is alone considered here as Jiva, or the individual soul, when endowed with the impulse to act, or when endowed with the grasping or reckoning of space and time.
So here, what he's saying is that the import is the substratum of the ego itself. It's what is ahankara? I mean, I love this word. He translated as ego. Is that the word he uses? Ego, does he use asmita? What does he use?
Jiva.
Jiva, the jiva. Okay. So the jiva usually means the sense of individuality. We'll get words like jivatman in contradistinction to paramatman. I prefer the term jiva bhavana, which is the one Gaudapada uses in the Mandukya Karika. The attitude or the feeling that I'm a person. So what is ego? It is the sense of self plus the superimposition of all sorts of thoughts of self. So when you say, I'm me, I think, well, I'm me, I'm Jim, I'm a person, I'm this body, I have these qualities, these characteristics. They're about me. But what's really going on is I am pure awareness, and I cognize all these qualities of the body and of the subtle body, and I superimpose them on that pure awareness. Now, in a sense, we're made this way. It is because of Maya that beings enter the world ignorant of their true nature. Where does this ignorance take place? Does the self get ignorant? No. Listen very carefully. In truth, the self is never deluded. Ignorance does not touch the self. Nobody doubts their existence. Nobody doubts that you are aware. I just add to that all sorts of objective phenomena. Well, why? Was God lonely and he wanted company? Was God wanting to be entertained? We have all these anthropomorphic answers. We're attributing to God human qualities. The answer is mystery. Just is. Why does light travel at 186,000 miles per second and not 187? I don't know, it just does. So this is the way of Maya. Now, ignorance is beginningless, but it does have an end. So the human mind is capable of rediscovering its own essential nature, which changes everything. All right, going on. Next verse.
Sajiva khalu dehesmin chinoti spandate sputam aham bhavat ahankaro mananat mana uchyate bodha nishchaya to buddhi indradrishte tathendriyam deham deha bhavanaya devo ghata bhavanaya ghataha. That jiva or individual soul indeed gathers experiences and moves manifestly in the body. It is called ahankara or ego on account of the feeling of I, manas or mind because of thinking, buddhi or intellect on account of certainty of knowledge or understanding. So also it is called the organ or faculty of sense from the view of the presiding deity. It is the body on account of the ideation of the body, and a pot due to the conception of the pot. As a note.
Go ahead.
The 5 organs of knowledge and the 5 organs of action, and the internal organs, mind, intellect, ego, and mind stuff, chitta, are supposed to be presided over each by its own niyantra or ruler, according to the traditional texts. The ruler is the individualized consciousness having the concerned experience and symbolized as the ruler.
All right, so I'm going to make it a little more simple. So in the dream state, can you say there's any fundamental distinction between the dream body, the dream feelings, the dream thoughts, the dream ego, the dream perceptions of the dream world? Ultimately, they're all just my mind, fracturing, splintering, refracting into all these various things. Nisargadatta Maharaj used to use the word Chaitanya, consciousness. All this is just the consciousness, as opposed to Chit, which is the eternal subject. The Chaitanya, which takes all these forms, is not fundamentally different from it. Other scriptures will use the term chitta, the stuff of mind. So when people get all worked up, okay, Jim, now tell me the exact difference between buddhi and manas. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's all just the stuff of mind. We use these different words simply to describe function. No fundamental difference between a thought, a feeling, a sense perception, the body, and the pot you see. All of it is just the play of mind. All just moves around. So when I went to the De Young Museum and had the total immersion virtual reality thing. So I'm inside Ramses's tomb and I see the stone walls, and then there's the brazier with the fire on it. And then I see the spirit of Nefertari come. What is all that stuff? It's just pixels. Hey, not photographs. Even if it is photographs, there's no stone there. There's no Nefertari there. But boy, did it seem real. That's what this world is. And that includes the sense of individuality. Don't worry about it. It's just another formant in mind. The main thing to know is it's not you. Any thoughts on this? We don't want to get too hung up in all these layers of cosmology that the various scriptures put forward. What he's saying here, the import of it, is it's all mind. All right, next verse.
Esha eva swabhavatma janai puryashtakam smritaha yatva kartitva bhokritva sakshitva adhya vipatini. Only this, jiva or individual soul, of the nature of one's inherent constitution is considered as the Puryakshata or eightfold city by the people. This causes the entry of the qualities of knowing, doing, enjoying, witnessing, and the like. Note, the eightfold city consists of manas or the mind, ahankara or the ego, buddhi or the intellect, and the five tanmatras or subtle elements or sense objects, that is sound, touch, form, taste, and smell.
Okay, those are the five elements. Again, all it is to be a person. Keep it simple. Is mind stuff. How do we gain freedom? Just don't take that mind stuff seriously. The mind stuff itself keeps trying to tell you that it's real. It's out there. And it's significant. Question?
No, I just liked your significant mind stuff.
Take it easy. It's all going to be okay. Because the self and the world, in truth, is nothing but the consciousness. Now, what about this body, mind, intellect? Well, it's a character in God's virtual reality drama. It has a role to play. So play your part. We finished Gita last night. It took us 2.5 years to get about. And at the end of it, Arjun says, my doubts are cleared. Everything is cool. I will do what you say. And Krishna says, go fight. Charge! And off he goes. Notice, he does not say, oh, I'm going to retire to the ashram and wear orange and be a woman. No. It's not his Swadharma. The problem of Arjuna in the first chapter is he has a disintegrated personality. His vasanas impel his body into this direction. His fear and his, emotional attachments tell him to go in another direction, and his confusion takes him in a third way. So the end result is paralysis. He is confused as to his duty. What should I do? He sits down in the bottom of the chariot and says, I will not fight. Paralysis, inertia, is the result of that disintegrated personality. At the end of Gita, he can ride the horse in the direction it's going. And Krishna is so wise, because he says, you can go off to the forest and try to fight your nature. But nature will out in the end. You're going to end up going to fight. Because that's what Kshatriyas do. Wonderful, wonderful teaching. And peace of mind is independent of the role we play in the world. That's the point. You can be a great Mahatma, you can be a sex worker, and still be at peace. I'm not suggesting that, by the way, to anybody. Next verse.
Ya samved jiva ityukta tadhi puryashtakam viduhu puryashtak kavashenaiva swapnat swapnataram yatha asatyam eva pashyanti jana tadvad idam jagat. Only that pure consciousness, which is described as jiva or the individual soul, is known as the Eightfold City. Only on account of this Eightfold City, people see this world just as they see what is unreal from one dream to another dream.
Yes. So, what our problem is, we can negate the dream when we wake up. Oh, that was such a vivid dream. It seemed so real. Meaning, while I was dreaming, it seemed real. I only see its unreality when I wake up. For most of us, we have yet to wake up from being awake. Now that shift from ego identity to knowing that you are Brahman is very subtle. It's very profound and powerful. Very subtle, just a little shift. Tune up the mind. Introvert your attention. Can you find a person there? Chilakasha, only the space of consciousness. Where did the person go? Oh, I put him in a drawer. No. It disappears just as much as the dream disappears. Senses may continue to report a world out there, but everything's different. Next verse.
Arjuna Vadhinir Dukkham Sukham Shepaya Jeevitam Yama Karishyati Tapo Damanat Papa Shankhaya Mahiyam Tena Nirantha Bhutai Martyai Amrityubhi Bharena Paribhutangi Harim Sharanameshyati Hari Dehe Vaye Natha Bhumau Avarishyati. Spend the duration of your life happily, free from sorrow, just as Arjuna. Yama, the god of death, will do penance because of the doubt of accrual of sin due to punishments meted out by him. Because of that, this earth, becoming dense with mortal beings, free from death and afflicted by the burden, will take refuge in Hari or Lord Vishnu, the protector god. Then Lord Hari will incarnate or descend on the earth with a pair of bodies as Krishna and Arjuna. Note, the incarnation of Lord Krishna and Arjuna according to the Puranas happened in a later yuga or world age. Vasishtha is here presented as seeing into the future and giving an account of Sri Krishna's message to Arjuna delivered in the battlefield and constituting the famous Bhagavad Gita. Thus, there is no apparent anachronism. This also highlights the importance of the sublime contents of the Bhagavad Gita, which are sought to be incorporated in this work by its author through the above expedient.
So what we're going to get, it's a literary device. We're going to get Vasishtha's Gita. And in fact, when we got these books, there were a fuller version, little short ones of Vasishtha's Gita. We may do a retreat or something with that. It's very short text. But the literary device is Vasishtha can see outside of time and space, so he'll be able to see into the future. That because see, we're at the time of Lord Ram, and then at a later period, he sees Krishna and Arjuna having their dialogue. So now we're going to get, again, an abridgment of Vasishtha's Gita, his condensed version of the entire Song of the Lord. Let's see what happens.
Vasudevo Junashcheti tada yuddhe upasthite Arjuna swajanan shatrun drishtayati Vishnanam. Lord Hari will incarnate on the earth as Vasudeva or Krishna and Arjuna. Then when the battle between Arjuna and his kinsmen takes place, Arjuna, seeing his kinsmen standing as his enemies, will fall into despondency.
Yes. So the first chapter of the Gita is the yoga of Arjuna grief, this disintegration of the personality. So he sees that in the future. That's what's going to happen. He will fall into despondency. What's his problem? He's functioning as a man of action. No problem. We see that in the text. He says to Krishna, drive my chariot between the two armies. No doubt. Then he gets between the two armies. And the first words of Krishna, anybody remember what they are?
For those who should not be. You grieve for the...
No, long before that.
Take a close look.
Yes. See these armies now arrayed for battle. So the first thing that we have to do is be aware enough to see what's going on. Aware enough to be conscious of our own interior processes. You go to the psychotherapist, I'm just angry all the time. You do a little bit of deeper digging, you find out, oh, actually, I'm sad a whole lot, and I'm frightened a whole lot. And I cover it up with anger. I'm not angry. I just stay at home all the time. Smoke dope. I have no problems. We're unconscious. First part. Look. What happens to poor Arjuna? He looks and sees his relatives. He sees all the gray areas. One of the things I love about the Battle of Kurukshetra is it's not good versus evil. Very little in our life is. Very few people are good. So we need to be aware. We need to look. Shankara says to have a knowledge of the world outside and an understanding of the world inside. So, and this can make us despondent. When we start to confront our utter powerlessness and trying to control other people. All sorts of things. All right, going next verse.
बोधयिष्यति तं देव प्राप्तकार्यैकसिद्धये आत्मा ह्यानादिमध्यान्त हते देहे न हन्यते शाश्वतोऽयम् अजो नित्यो जन्म मृत्यु विवर्जितः. The God Krishna will teach him spiritual knowledge for the accomplishment of the unique work that has arrived. Open quote, the self is indeed without beginning, middle, and end. It is not killed when the body is killed. It is eternal, unborn, invariable, and without birth and death.
So that's the essence of the first part of the second chapter. So again, going into when he gets deeply into the teaching, actually, in a sense, Punit was right. Arjuna surrenders, says, teach me, Lord. And the first thing that Krishna says at that point is, you grieve for whom you should not grieve, though you speak words of wisdom. Now I'm going to tell you why. And he covers 3 dimensions, which are the 3 areas that we cover all the way through Gita. First, all bodies are born, they grow up, they grow old, they die. Why grieve over the inevitable? Oh, I'm so sad. Why are you sad, Jim? The sun set this evening. The sun sets every evening. I know, but I don't want it to set. Why grieve over the inevitable? 2, as a man or a woman casts off old, worn-out garments, so this jiva, this transmigrating soul, casts off old bodies and takes up new ones. From the standpoint of the subtle, it's all going to be okay. One of the things that I figured out just recently, that Donald Trump was born a few months after Adolf Hitler died. I just find that incredibly interesting. Seems like you learned much this evening. Then there's the 3rd level of the teaching. Paramatman, the Supreme Self, is birthless, changeless, deathless. It is not born, it does not die, it doesn't transmigrate. It is kutusta. It's the word Gita uses. Still and immovable like a mountain. So here he's paraphrasing that teaching. Going, all this is in 2nd chapter of Gita. Going on.
Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha sanyasta sarva sankalpa samashanta manabhava tyaga sankalpa jalanam asanga iti kathyate. Perform actions or duties established in yoga, having renounced attachment and the desire for fruits or the results of such actions. Be equal in pleasure and pain, of tranquil mind, giving up all ideation or desire. The renunciation of the web of imagination or desires is declared as non-attachment.
Yes, let's parse this one. Here he's going into depth on the teaching of Karma Yoga, which is in verses 3, 4, and 5. So the first idea,
Perform actions or duties established in yoga.
so I like to take chapters 3, 4, and 5 and break them down into 5 steps. Here Yoga Vasishtha says, step 1, act, O Arjuna. You do not attain freedom by the cessation of action. How shall I act? According to your inherent latent proclivities, your swadharma. What is your particular vocation, calling in the world? What do I do with this actions? Do it in the yajna spirit. Renouncing. Giving everything up to God. Then renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action. And then finally, renouncing the sense of agency. And now Yoga Vasishtha takes it one step further. Renouncing the web of thought. Is that what he said?
Web of imagination.
Web of imagination. Giving up our belief in the reality of any mental concept, any sankalpa. No attachment to any. In the end, the only thing we need to renounce is the mind itself. How do I renounce the mind? Grasp its fundamental, absolute unreality. You can't think a real thought, including the thought I just gave. Don't take your mind seriously, or anybody else's. Going on.
Should I read the next idea or the next verse?
Pardon me?
The next idea or the next verse?
Okay, well, maybe, I think I got them, but let's check them. Next idea.
Having renounced attachment and the desire for fruits.
Yes,
results,
we
right?
did that.
Be equal in pleasure and pain.
Yes, so how do we do this? This idea of samadrishta. This is a big idea in the second chapter of Gita. The yogi's mind is the same. Heat and cold, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor, or success and failure. Meaning, I try to be equanimous in all the various physical things that happen. I'm not attached to worldly happiness, worldly sorrow. I understand what they come from. I'm happy when the situation is conducive, according to my stupid past ideas. Unhappy when it doesn't go my way. Honor and dishonor, or success and failure, are simply evaluations. Either other people make them, or we make them about ourselves. You get a bad review at work. Do you engage in violence against yourself? Oh, I'm so terrible. Or those people, how could they say that about me? They're all a bunch of blah, blah, blah. No. is what they said accurate? If it is, endeavor to make changes. If you don't think it's accurate, no big deal. I like to think of building character as an art form. So there you are out at the shore, and you're painting a seascape. You look out at the ocean, and you look up at the sky, and you look at the canvas, and you say, needs a little bit more blue here. That's very different than looking at the shore. You look at your painting, it says, doesn't look right. You tear it up. That's what many of us do to ourselves. Keep this Vasishtha. Doesn't mean we don't endeavor to use information to do better in the world. Of course we do. Any of you who've been in management, you know, it's a great skill to be able to correct people, make positive suggestions without triggering people's egos. Who's had that trouble? You know, you make a criticism to a subordinate and they react, and it becomes counterproductive. Have you had that in your work?
Yeah, for sure.
And you? It's a manager who can inspire rather than wilt somebody. It's a good manager. Very difficult. Very, very difficult. The key is you got to be able to step aside and not personalize things. That's the great key. You should do that with yourself too. Right, next idea.
Giving up all ideation or desire.
Yes. And here, this idea of I'll be happy when, it'll be better if. Of course, we have tasks to do and we strive for excellence, but we give up the notion of getting what I want. That's what's going to make me happy. Next idea.
The renunciation of the web of imagination is declared as non-attachment.
Yes. So we talked about that before. All right, next verse.
Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mama namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Fix your mind on me, be devoted to me, sacrifice to me, bow to me, so shall you come to me, having thus united yourself with me as your highest object.
So this is the very last thing he says at the end of the Gita. He says it earlier too. So the way we want to look at this is it's not so much about thinking of Krishna out there. That's a lower form of upasana, of worship. But when Krishna says me, he means the self, because he was in a full state of yoga. So let's read that verse again. And instead of using me, objective case, use I. Let's read it again. If you read the English with that little twist and see how it changes.
Fix your mind on I. Be devoted to I. Sacrifice to I. Bow to I. So shall you come to I, having thus united yourself with I as your highest object.
Yeah. That's intense inquiry into the self. Retiring into the self. Not letting the mind extrovert into the world. How Swamiji used to say it, hurry home, Hari Om. Next verse.
Samanyam paramam cheti dvirupe vidhi menatha panya diyuktam samanyam param sukshmam anamayam. Sinless one, know the common or the ordinary and the highest or the transcendental as my two forms. The ordinary one is what is endowed with hands and the like. The transcendental is subtle and untainted.
So here, what he wants us to be able to do is make this distinction between the self and the not self, the subject and the equivalents, the body, mind, intellect, the perceiver, feeler, thinker, entity, as Swamiji would call it. He will talk about Purusha and Prakriti in Gita. Purusha meaning consciousness, Prakriti meaning the world of name and form. But in the end, what we see as Prakriti, nature, is just consciousness too. Other scriptures will use the terms Nirguna Brahman, Brahman without qualities, so Saguna Brahman, Brahman with qualities, meaning the world of phenomena. In Gita, Krishna will say, this phenomenal world is my prakriti, my nature. And he'll say, but I have a higher nature. Parama prakriti. The way to bring this into direct experience, just do a visualization, an imagination. You imagine a piece of chocolate. You cannot find a second substance out of which you've made your imaginary chocolate. Yet you don't turn into chocolate. By forks, there's a knower and a known. They seem like two. They're not two. Really examine that direct experience and then compare it to the dream state. Only difference is in the dream state, we have the additional element of ignorance. What happens because I've got the additional element of ignorance? My imaginary chocolate seems real. Just like in this world, my ego, my body, my stupid little zoo of a life seems so important. Next verse.
Yavat apratibuddhatvam tavat samanyako bhava tatkramat samprabuddhatvam tato jnasasi tatparam. Excuse me. As long as you are not awakened to self-knowledge, so long be one belonging to the ordinary. Well awakened to self-knowledge in course of that, you will then know that transcendental form.
So if you're in the state of spiritual ignorance, meaning I think I'm a person, I think the world is real, and I gotta go get what I want. What should I do? In Gita, Krishna says, by all means be a yogi. You must have an ego identity. Take on the identity as the mumukshu, the aspirant for liberation. But for a woman or man of knowledge, what is the mark of a person of knowledge? They don't think they're a person anymore. They know they are Brahman. Listen very carefully. They don't think they're an enlightened person either. They know they are Brahman. They have no relationship with this imaginary body-mind intellect. Just watching, like watching traffic. Any thoughts? Next verse.
Ajnanat atmano nunam sattam ayati vasana atmajnane mahabodha vilayam yati vasana evam sambodhita samyak tyakta shoko bhavishyati. It is indeed by the absence of this knowledge of the self, mental impression comes into being. In self-knowledge, mental impression vanishes on account of great awakening or spiritual knowledge. Thus, well instructed, Arjuna will become free from sorrow.
Yes. So, because of avidya, ignorance, ajnana, ignorance, not knowing. Where does this knowing and not knowing take place? In the vijnana maya kosha, the subtle intellect, in the buddhi. If I do not know my essential nature, then this ego sense arises. I see the world as separate from me, and getting what I want seems serious. I'm caught in samsara, the world of becoming. If, on the other hand, my ignorance is destroyed, then I know nothing's ever going to change me. It's all okay. Nothing touches me. World is pratibimba, like a reflection in a mirror. Everything is different. Next one.
It's the end of the section.
All right. It's quarter of. We'll start the next one.
Section 4. Bhikshu Pakhyana, the story of a mendicant.
A bhikshu is one who begs for his meals. He has a bowl. He goes, bhiksha, bhiksha. The person who's begging for a meal is a bhikshu. Okay.
Aparam kasyachit bhiksho itihasam imam shrinu asit kaschit maha bhikshu samadhya bhyasa tatparah yachintayati tachittam tadrupam pratipadhyate. Another story of a certain mendicant. There was a certain great mendicant who was eagerly engaged in the practice of samadhi or absorption in absolute consciousness. Whatever he contemplates with the mind fixed on that, he attains to that form.
So there's a lot of great import in this. So this particular mendicant, this bhikshu, is fond of samadhi. So he goes into that absolute state, all thoughting ceases. And from there, his mind emerges with a very clear sankalpa. Remember our law of sankalpa. Any sankalpa consistently maintained that isn't contradicted or conflicted tends towards grossification. Now, I like to use the wheel, the chakra, as an example of this. If you and I want to get what we want, and our belief is I have to push matter around to get it, that's like being at the rim of the wheel. So if you want to go 45 degrees of arc, buy it, earn it, put it on a credit card, etc. But if my mind is more quiet and I go to the center of the wheel, which is samadhi, then to move 45 degrees is just beep. When we intend sankalpa, it is an effortless experience. It is knowing. Does not involve willing or forcing your mind. That's like being partway up the spoke. You've got some weird idea that there's some power opposed to your sankalpa. It is so simple. Think about what you want to have happen, not what you don't. So you and I, we may do a sankalpa in the morning in our meditation. But through the whole rest of the day, oh, what a horrible world it is. Oh, the politics of the world. Oh, nobody loves me. We're sabotaging our own sankalpa. I didn't realize it. So this bhikshu, again, this is allegory, but it teaches an important lesson. He is fond of samadhi, where his mind is the most still. But then his sankalpa, his intention, manifests from that standpoint. Going on.
Kadachit esha leelartham abhut jiva namakah jiyato viharan swapne kaschit vipro abhuvaha vipra swapne cha samantah sopi swapne bhavat nripaha. At a certain time, for the sake of diversion, he became a man called Jivata. That Jivata, going about in a dream, became a certain Brahmana. The Brahmana became a feudatory prince in the dream. He in turn became a king in the dream.
So what he has here is layer upon layer of dream upon dream. It's not the Matrix. What was the Inception? Was that the other one where they had dreams within dreams?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 1,000 years ago. They're having the same idea. But what he's talking about is actually what is reincarnation. is just dream upon dream upon dream. And what impels us into a new experience is desire. Here, the bhikshu is sporting, though. He's not jonesing, he's sporting. There's a difference. So, it draws to mind the Tibetan Buddhists who do all these very elaborate tantric practices. But when you do a tantric ritual, it begins and ends with a meditation on shunyata, the fundamental emptiness of all form. Form is empty, and emptiness is a form. So you stay in this place of extreme vairagya when you do this. All right, going on.
Evam sakramasha swapne surastri cha tato mrigi bhutva tatolata bhutva brahmaratvam upagatah brahmaro varana lokat varanatvam avapyasa kandastha brahmaradhyasat gajo bhuyo pyabhut alihi pashva sthaham sanvidya hanso bhutva punaluthan brahma sarasatam prapta sopashyat rudra mekada tada buddhi abhut tasya rudoham iti nishchata. Thus gradually having become a heavenly woman, then a female deer, then a creeper in a dream, he arrived at the state of being a black bee. That black bee, on account of seeing an elephant, attained to the state of being an elephant. The elephant once again became a black bee by false attribution on seeing a bee on its temple. Then having become a swan due to the perception or recognition of a swan by its side, and moving again to and fro, attained to the state of an inhabitant of the lake of Amma, the creator god. Once he saw Rudra or Shiva, the destructive aspect of God. Then the settled notion or the positive idea, I am Rudra, arose in him.
So the whole point, this is poetry, but you and I, in essence, do the same thing. The mind is under the influence. That didn't work out so well. Maybe I'll try that. It'll be better if. I'll be happier that. Just we go from experience to experience. Whatever we put our mind to, that we become. The Master Jesus taught the same thing. Whatsoever you ask, believing, so shall you receive. As a man, as a person thinketh in his heart, so is he, so are they. It's all this idea. It's not out there. It's never out there. Now, the inverse is true too. If you look at your life and your reaction to your life is this is wrong and that's wrong and I'm unhappy, nobody else did it. Don't try to change the circumstances. Let your sankalpa be for the affect that you want because of it. I want a bigger house. How are you going to feel if you get a bigger house? You'll be happy. I want a motorcycle. How will you feel if you get a motorcycle? Be happy. I want 20 children. How will you feel if you have 20 children? I'll be happy. Let your sankalpa be. I live and I move and I have my being in God. What is the nature of God? Chidananda Rupa. Shivoham, Shivo. And that you're proud of and take care of how that will outpicture it. All right. Next one. How many more in this section?
About 12 more.
We get partway. All right.
Ruddha sattva nutattan magnya Rudras Tvanu tam jnana vilasinya dhiyatataha swaya shesham udantam tam drishtva vismayamagataha. And then that Rudra, that is the mendicant swan who had become Rudra by contemplating on him, with an intellect shining with incomparable knowledge, having perceived intuitively his own entire history, was astonished.
So we have this same kind of mythology put forward in the life of the Buddha. He's sitting under the tree and all of his incarnations pass before him. Doesn't mean all your prior lives need to pass before you. In fact, the sum total of it all is right here in the texture of your mind today. All you need to do actually is just look at your most recent history. It's all there. You keep going from loka to loka to loka to loka. You are a Sangha, absolutely unattached. All right, going on.
Aho vichitram mayeyam pata vishwa vimohini aham yonishate dhantva rudratvam adhunagataha. Ah, wonderful is this Maya or illusion, bewildering the world. Having wandered in 100 wombs, I have now reached the state of Rudra.
So we have wandered through thousands of wombs, meaning I've been so many things. Now, in this particular life, you have the capacity to be Rudra, to be Shiva itself. Meaning I know who I am. I know what this world is. All right, we'll end here and pick it up next week. What verse are we on for next week?
44.
44. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all. Have a good Thanksgiving.